I remember in high school, it was my second year of high school. I went to a 3-year high school. I had a social studies teacher who ended up being a part of the Revolutionary Communist Party.
Oh,
And he started
What
teaching
do you
us
know?
about the Great Leap Forward and Mao Zedong and the Red Book. And
No offense, but it sounds like some fucking commie gobbledygook.
later on he's going to drop an N-bomb, and it's going to... I could drop a better N-bomb than him and have it be more black, okay?
was inspired by how many black people showed up, how many evil niggas were out there with guns saying, fuck the police, fuck the po-po, like, fuck the police, fuck the po-po. I really loved it.
I really loved it.
Yes! Would you have felt the same way about Malcolm X if he was like, I think we should be really weary about white liberals? They're like wolves in sheep's clothing.
Right?
Like, how
Right.
would you have taken him if he sounded like that? If I see a trans Guatemalan, I just want to go, oh, dude, sorry about that. Our bad.
Really? Yeah,
sorry, dude.
Like
my money went to that dude. Not my intention, but I'm sorry.
We honestly, at this point, we can start talking reparations to the trans Imagine if, like, the food trucks stopped coming in the city for a while. You think that these people are going to be wandering around? Like, some guys would be like, for my gender, and then they're going to fucking eat him and steal his food. like this.
I was just going to say, I could see in the early stages of the AIDS epidemic, and you don't really know what's going on. You don't know, like, how is it passed? But, like, at this point, it's like, just stop peeing into each other's eyes. And, like, then you won't get AIDS. It was like, do you remember when the...
Yeah, I remember when Freddie Mercury said that. Absolutely. Welcome, comrades! I'm RD, short for rhetorically defective, here with my botched phalloplasty survivor co-host Patrick, and we are Done With It, a podcast that's dedicated to the sea of communists that just don't get enough attention. Feel free to subscribe to our YouTube, or to see the video of the podcast, link in the description. Patrick, how's it going down below, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good. The wound is healing up pretty nice. I've lost my dilating rod. Not sure exactly where it is, so I am using an old banana in its place. But we'll see what happens.
Well, no, that's a vaginoplasty.
Oh my God.
I'm implying that you had a vagina, and what your penis looks like now is a botched vagina to penis surgery.
I'm really tired, so I'm mixing up my my mutilation surgeries. That's my bad.
So what I'm implying is that there was a sushi roll of skin rolled up, cut off of you, and then sewed to your cunt. And hopefully it's healing up well.
Yeah, it's a process. It's a process. I'm trusting it.
Patrick, can I ask you what might be a personal question?
Oh, sure.
What if insecurities are worth embracing, particularly for the black fat? What if insecurities are not a moral failing of the individual, but rather an inadvertent critique of a society that seeks to punish, harm, and abuse ugly people who dare to name their perceived flaws are only named as such because of anti-blackness? You ever think about that?
I mean, I'm not going to lie. It's crossed my mind a time or two, but I'm not sure if the theory holds up. I wonder if there's somebody who would suggest otherwise. I can't even imagine.
So we're not even going into that video. I just came across that, and particularly for the black fat.
Wait, oh my gosh, I wasn't even reading. But what if insecurities are worth embracing particularly?
Would you think I was making that up? You think I'm that clever? I'm not that much of a genius. These are all literary works over here, okay?
Holy shit! I mean, just it's very insidious, right? Black women hold fat in different areas, and they have more curvy bodies sometimes. But it's not even just embracing that. It's actually embracing obesity and trying to co-opt it as a identity. It's literally just it's ideological mental illness.
So I need you
so
I need you to take off your communist glasses for a moment and swap them out. You might have to dig a little bit. Swap them out for your black queer anarchist glasses, okay?
Okay, all right. I mean, honestly, they're just a slightly different shade, the exact same model of glasses, so it shouldn't be too bad.
So I feel like this person's an anarchist. They say all of the same communist theology.
Yeah,
But I
funny how
feel
that
like
works out.
I feel like the anarchist really wants to be very self-indulgent because they just want to destroy
Yeah,
the systems. They don't give a fuck to build it up with anything, so that really allows them to be extra self-indulgent and talk about their personal stories at nauseam.
that makes sense because he's like he's a left anarchist, and if you talk to enough of the right anarchists and some of the worst types of libertarians, it becomes very clear that they're just interested in their own self-interest and hedonism. Like it doesn't go any deeper than that. So that makes sense.
So let's get to know our boy, all right?
What do you mean, your boy?
Prince Shakur. He's my boy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're boys together.
BOI, boy. Okay, gotcha. Oh, God.
Okay. So, in order to listen to this, you're going to have to picture that you're on a date with Prince Shakur, because that's how he's talking right now, okay? So, this video is called How to Become an Organizer, My Story. Direct Action 101. So, we'll learn about what direct action is. It's political violence, but we'll learn about how they justify it and rationalize it. This is a crazy person. We are gonna listen to Cluster B on steroids. But to listen to him, it's gonna sound like you're on a date trying to bang a girl and you're just gonna put up with it. We're not trying to bang the girl right now. We're just trying to get some content out of it. So that's really the analogy I'm going with.
That's fair. I like it. It works.
Aid work at the border. Being here during the election season, results for this most recent election, and the fact that Trump won and all these other things, it really has me reflecting on a lot. And my upbringing definitely informs a lot of how I've come to the work that I do now. But I haven't always been radical. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, to Jamaican parents that immigrated to the U.S. in the 70s. And I grew up with a mom who worked in a hair salon. I grew up on the east side of Cleveland in predominantly Black spaces in a predominantly Black part of the city.
Oh,
and
God.
I think just that context growing up, being in a space that is over-policed was already something that I was aware of and could understand. But I also grew up in an immigrant family, a Jamaican.
I love the tacit implication that since it was a Black area, it's just over-policed. It's just because they're Black. Has nothing to do with the behavior of the area.
I know. It's incredibly... Well,
he sneaks that in.
Yeah, he does. And it's a complete disconnect because, like, overwhelmingly, the Black populace did not support defund the police. It's literally just like a mostly white and this kind of Black dudes, like leftist shithead ideology that actually harms the communities. Also, can I just say that I hate the way leftists say spaces. It makes me want to remove all of the space around them so they have no space.
It's pretty clever for Eon to call it X spaces. That's a pretty boss move.
That is really funny.
To reclaim the word. We're reclaiming the word. It's our word.
It's all
Jamaican family that exhibited a lot of anti-Blackness, that was homophobic in a lot of ways. So even when I was younger, I remember being 8 or 9 and saying
his mother is extremely disappointed in him. I don't know if you're aware of that. She's very I read a part of his book. She's very disappointed.
Bless your heart. The homophobia was anti-Black. The homophobia was anti-Black. He's tying everything in to his own identity and his own experiences and then externalizing that onto the world.
He is.
Like
it's funny.
Sounds like he's in a therapy session constantly.
Yeah, and it's funny because, you know, there's sort of like a culture of like a very gruff masculinity. I don't know if it's like I'm not sure which is more heightened, like in the Black populace or like the Hispanic populace, with the whole machismo concept. But I mean, they're patriarchal. It's terrible.
Homophobic things along with my friends because I thought it was funny and I thought it was a joke.
It is funny,
and lo and
fag.
behold, 3 years later, I'm a gay bee. I didn't really grow up in a community or an environment where we were taught to trust the police. Yeah, you grow up Black and you get the talk and it's like, you only say 6 words to an officer: yes, so, no, sir, and thank you, sir. And so I grew up learning how to respect police for the sake of my own safety, but it was never a thing like, oh, police are always right, so you just need to understand that they're always right.
I always love how that's unique to Black people. Like, white people never conduct themselves. White people will just flip off a cop, right, and act in a certain way because we're white. And it's like, no, it's kind of the same thing. And like, you just like, yeah, what's going on?
Yeah, well, I mean, he's framing it in that, right? Like, white people are respectful to police, I would assume he would say, because police serve to sort of uphold white hegemony in the
Yep.
United States, whereas black people are respectful to police out of fear because the police were originally created in order to round up ex-slaves, and that's continued to this day. I mean, that's the thing about these like these kind of like leftist kind of communist types is that you know what they're going to say like before they even say it. Any topic, you know exactly what they're going to say. It's hilarious.
And yeah, I grew up in a pretty, what felt normal household. My mom, my stepdad, my brother. I was a goody two shoes, loved to read books. I remember
Stepdad.
there was this one time where me and my mom were leaving my
His
cousin's
dad's
house
dead.
and we stopped at this stop sign and there
What?
I'm pretty sure his dad's dead. I think he was murdered, if I remember correctly. I looked into this guy a little bit.
Yeah.
was this black couple arguing and the woman came up to the door and knocked and I was in the passenger seat. She was saying, please, please help me. I need to go. I need to get away from my partner who's abusing me. And my mom sped off. And I remember I was in such shock. And I remember I was so sad that she wouldn't help her. And my mother immediately was like, if that kind of shit happens in Jamaica, you're getting set up to be robbed. Sorry. And this isn't to necessarily share to judge my mom, but it's to share a moment where I very much as a kid saw that the adult world was filled with a lot of messed up and evil things that could happen to people that people could do to each other. And based off of my mother's reaction, I was so shocked and I decided that I want to be someone who could maybe intervene. And fast forward to when I'm about 12, that was when my stepfather went to prison for the first time. I write about a lot of these things in my book, which is why I feel okay sharing it here. But essentially, my stepfather was a drug dealer for part of the time that he was raising us. He was also undocumented, so he went to prison.
His stepfather was an undocumented drug dealer,
Interesting.
which
Well-
couldn't possibly be his stepfather's fault at all in any
No.
capacity.
No,
Probably an upstanding guy, right?
Yeah, no, like especially like the black populace, if they're leftist leaning, like they completely come at it from like a sort of like what's it called, an external locus of control,
Mhm.
where like there's no it seems it like there's no responsibility within the individual. It is all the external world's problem, which of course is just communism because the external world has to conform around you in order to bring about
But
your perfect system.
In order to remove the individuality, you have to put a title on the person and place them in a group. So undocumented and black, those are two groups that this person is in that we can then systematize to what the issue is and remove it from the individual. That's the whole point of putting everyone in atomized groups.
Yeah, exactly.
And for about 5 years. And this is all mixed up with other things. In the months leading up, like our family started telling us, start calling him Uncle Joe on the phone. Don't mention the people in your class, that you have a stepdad.
I'm sorry, like, what would have to happen in your life for you to move to Mexico illegally, start dating a woman that has a kid, and start selling drugs? What could you how good of a person could you be?
Yeah,
That's a rough start. That's a rough start to assuming that's a decent person.
Yeah, it's just frustrating. It's just frustrating seeing, like, instead of like taking ownership and advocating for yourself into like a healthy political way, it's just you take on this persona and this ideology that actually harms you, and yet you think it's going to help you. Sad, honestly.
And at one point, the FBI searched our house looking for someone else. And so very quickly at the age of 12, I started to understand, like, oh, there are systems that can take away people that I love.
What
and
about
I
the
never
structures?
viewed my stepfather as this criminal or villain, like so many people talk in the media about immigrants. I viewed him as someone that took me to bookstores, as someone that watched the
fucking
news,
drug dealer.
someone who was a bad cook, who...
Yeah, so, he didn't cook very well, sure, but he also took him to bookstores.
Well, I'm assuming that he had somebody cook the meth. He wasn't cooking himself.
Yeah, a bad cook of meth.
It wasn't
would
pure.
invite his friends over to my yard sale and have them buy up all my crappy tween things that I had.
He sold us some
And
drugs.
it was a real...
Dude, Prince Shakur, I am sorry. he was probably trying to fuck your mom. All right. He's your stepdad. He was probably trying to be cool with you, to bang your mom. He was undocumented. He was selling drugs. And I don't think it was just to hold your mommy's hand. I'll put it to you that way.
Yeah, and it's frustrating because even if you're a drug dealer, like there's a human and an individual there.
Yep.
And I guarantee there's lots of good things about that person, but it's not a story about them trying to work within like the law and trying to overcome any kind of adversity. Like my dad was like a miscreant that he was like pure white trash Irish that like came from nothing. And he was able to work his way up and get like a job at a railroad and eventually become like the head conductor. Like it's never a story about that. It's just a story about he's a person. He did these crimes. The crimes aren't his fault. It's everybody else's. Like there's never like it's a very I don't know. There's never any sort of like American ingenuity involved in this story. But it's just to cast him as a victim that's outside of his own control.
Any negative aspect of the person's life is spoken of just objectively and clinically, and then all of the emotion and subjectivity is reserved for what should be objective, which is right. It's an exact inversion. Whenever there's something awful that they did, it's like, yeah, he sold drugs, he went to jail, but he also took me to bookstores, and it's like, I think we're leaving some things out.
Yeah, a little bit, a tiny bit.
Shift in my innocence because there was so much stigma around it. Like there was so much, I won't say shame, but there was a big level of like protection and this isn't over. I mean, I didn't talk to any of my friends at school about it. I felt really isolated and really sad. And it kind of opened me up to the part of youth where if there are adults in your life that are entangled in the carceral system, when you visit them in jail, like I had to visit my stepdad in jail a lot of times when I was younger, your recounting of your life kind of becomes a performance. You want to show up as the good versions of yourself, even though at the time I knew I was changing, my body was changing, my mind was changing. I felt like my mother's rage and anger was overflowing. I was angsty and queer, and I felt like no one understood me. And granted, I had a good group of friends in high school, but I wonder if you can hear that in the background. But it still made it really difficult to know that prison was still in the background, and all these myths and ideas about Blackness that people had told me growing up about how to be careful, it was happening to someone that I loved, and we didn't talk about.
He was a drug.
Right. Yeah, I was just gonna go ahead.
Like he's just a poor innocent drug.
It's because he was black.
Yeah, I know. It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating. As if there's.
I can't believe he didn't get deported, dude. How much of a white supremacist country is this really? If the man stayed in the country.
I know, but just the portrayal. I mean, he would argue that it's because of the systems and structures that are in place that forced him to become again external locus of control. Everything is the external world's fault. There's no introspection, none of that, which makes sense since this dude's like classic like cluster B like narcissist.
Why can't we just live in an anarchist society where my stepfather could sell heroin to sixth graders? You know.
Because of the white cis heteronormative patriarchy rhetorical. That's why.
About it as much as I think we should have, and I felt really alone, and I think being queer doubled the kind of abandonment and confusion of this time and space. And I remember in high school, it was my second year of high school, I went to a 3-year high school. I had a social studies teacher who ended up being a part of Revolutionary Communist Party.
Oh,
and he started teaching us about the Great Leap Forward and Mao Zedong and the Red Book and the Civil Rights Movement and Roe v. Wade and
it's really important to a lot of people think that the Civil Rights Movement was this huge liberal thing, right? But it's incredible that this, I learned about Mao's Great Leap Forward and the Civil Rights Movement. Like it's important to note that those two things were included, but from the same person, right?
And it's interesting because I think some of the time stuff that communists have done in the past, like it's created a good in society in the short term. It's just that what the long-term plan is in terms of like dividing the country into these different racial groups.
I would contest that. It doesn't create good in the short term because they do it through rioting. They do it through non-violence with the plan of having violence happen, and then saying, "Look at how the police are treating us." So,
Yeah.
what you know about the civil rights movement is just generic how we think about it in general. If you do a modicum of research, it's the communists were all over that, over that, and to the point where there was black people as well that were against it because they saw how it was being utilized by communists. There were some high-level anti-communists back in the day that were trying to scream to the heavens about how, no, this is being co-opted, it's not in your best interest. And so the way you're describing it, I disagree, because it wasn't good in the short term. It was very bad in the short term. And then the way that it is portrayed in society is that we needed it, or else it was like a desperate need that it had to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of some of the peaceful protesting, like inconveniencing different shop owners and being like, "Hey, we're people too. Let us eat here," type of stuff, in that sort of like shit lib kind of way. But I do think it's hilarious though that he does group the civil rights movement immediately in with Mao Zedong. I find that incredibly fascinating. But it was like in the same breath he mentioned them both.
To privacy and all these things about history and capitalism and imperialism and colonization. And I remember leaving class almost every day being like, this is fucking nuts.
At
Like, this is the
15.
world we live in. We live in a world where our
It's
military
crazy.
can go around the world and do whatever the fuck they want. They can create Guantanamo Bay. They can take away women's reproductive rights. And I really will say that age 14, 15 was when my radicalization journey really started, because it was when I began to see these structures. Like, I think when you're young and you're a teenager, it's hard to imagine these structures when they haven't been explained to you in depth, and you live in a culture that's indoctrinated by, you need to go to college, get good grades, don't get a girl pregnant, and that's your success. But we aren't really given a version of success, especially in poor, lower income.
God forbid being educated and not getting your girl pregnant. Oh man, such brainwashing.
Well, so I've been thinking about this. They do this thing where on one hand we live in a multicultural society, but then on the other hand they act like we just have like one dominant culture. And we really don't. Like, whatever the dominant culture is in Massachusetts is different than in Alabama. And it's different than it is in California or different cities. That's just the states, let alone the cities in different rural areas.
Yeah.
So on one hand, we're multicultural, and on the other hand, we're when we have to be, we're monocultural. And this is the one culture that everyone has to go through. So there's a duplicitousness there.
Yeah, and when they say it's like, right, when they say like, oh, we live in this sort of like dominant society. I mean, they just like, it doesn't matter if the culture is different in Alabama than in New England or whatever. It doesn't matter. All that matters is that the majority of people in charge in those states are white. That's literally all he sees. That's all he sees. That's all that matters.
They invent this dominant culture where even if I talk to white people that are from different areas, it's, I mean, if you grow up not in a religious family versus a religious family, if you're black, you have more in common with the white person that grew up Christian than you do with a black person that was an atheist family, and vice versa.
Yeah, but he isn't. He can't. He's completely blinded to that. He can't see it. It's impossible for him to see that.
Well, let's move on to his college years.
Oh boy.
Of growing up with an incarcerated parent really began to make me an abolitionist, because nothing is as chilling as being 15 years old and going into a prison and emptying out your pockets and putting everything you have in that little lockbox.
I love how I skipped forward and he's still going on about it.
And then you go into a room and you have to perform a certain version of being a happy teen. And it changed me, and it taught me a lot about, I think political life is where we deserve to be the most honest in our lives. So welcome to this Direct Action 101 series. We're going to be going through a bunch of different chapters of my life.
Of my life!
It's all about him.
We're going to be going through a bunch of different chapters about my life.
He is one of the most indoctrinated individuals I've ever seen when it comes to the sort of lived experience. Like, he explores like theory in a very vague way, but everything is always done through the lens that it is his own personal life. It's literally just this is like a narcissistic like pet project diary of his.
But it's for other people.
Yeah, but
that's why
yeah.
everything is put into a box, and then he's just talking about the boxes that people are in, and he's like, yeah, isn't it horrible how capitalism and white supremacy puts you in those boxes I just put you in?
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, that's what Ray's a liar. So, he's a big fan of dominant hierarchies. He just wants to, change what he perceives to be the dominant the hierarchy as it is today.
Actually, let's skip. I can't stand him. Let's skip to adult radicalization because I feel like he's going to repeat himself in that section.
I love when he talks about riots. It's my favorite.
I have my entire life ahead of me. I have to figure out what I want to do next, who I want to be. Like, what
so
does
unique
any of this
to you.
mean? And it was really, really overwhelming to be given this kind of safety net or this web of like this kind of playground, which university and college can often be for all different kinds of people, but especially people that come from rougher backgrounds. And then you're going into a space where you're kind of taught or encouraged to experiment, to critically think, and leaving that space and graduating and deciding, what am I going to do next?
He hasn't been critically thinking since he was 14 or 15, okay? Once you hear about Mao's Great Leap Forward and you think it's a good idea, critical thinking has left you quicker than your stepdad did, okay? It's out of your fucking brain.
Oh, he's critically thinking, just not the actual type of critical thinking that you want. He's a different type of critical thinker, as in critical theorist.
What kind of person am I going to be? How do I want to actualize these beliefs in my real life?
He misspelled
graduated, ended up working a summer in Montana as a housekeeper, and from there, I'd say, is the next chapter of my life. Let's go somewhere else and talk about that.
More about me.
2015 to 2020. I can't really say what I identified as politically. I knew in university, I tended to align with the people that were more punk, more radical, more weird, more indie, love to drink malt liquor, love to do pop.
When he says doesn't know what to identify politically, that's why I feel like he went with anarchist, because he can't do communist. It's got to be him. It's got to be him. Yeah. And then little sprinkles of other people.
Yeah. Also, I'm pretty sure that background he's standing in front of is fake. Nothing is moving. He's standing in front of like a green screen right now. Just random observation.
This is when he was I think doing mutual aid in Mexico, which we'll cover after we're done with our introduction of him.
All right, well, just watch and see if anything in the background moves.
Poppers. Love to make out with their friends at parties. I knew what that meant socially, but politically, like, what does that mean?
What does it mean politically to do that?
What is?
So applying politics to app exactly.
Yeah, but what is it they say that the personal is political? I think, or the political is personal. So whatever the hell they say.
On screen it says, "What does your version of fun say about how you show up in the world politically?" And politically only means power. What else could it mean?
Yeah.
It just means power. It just means I want power over other people. When they use politically. When a liberal or a non-leftist or conservative or Republican, when they're talking about a non-extremist, I guess I would say, is talking about politics, it's a necessary evil the way that they talk about it. This person wants to bring up politics into absolutely everything because they want to control absolutely everything.
Yeah, and I think he loves politics because he basically makes it his personality. I think most regular people actually hate politics. Like, I guarantee most people are annoyed that they have to try to get people to stop cutting kids' dicks off. Like, those people don't those people, they don't want to be doing that, a lot of those people, but this dude, I mean, his entire identity is political. His entire identity.
Yeah, Billboard Chris is just traveling the world because he wants to have fun conversations and have it be paid for, right?
Yeah, and get punched in the face every other day.
Dude, with the Trump administration, Billboard Chris is a very happy man. There's an unbelievable amount of things being done in the first couple of weeks of Trump's presidency. which I'm sure this guy will make a video about. Actually, the next video we're going to watch after we're done introducing him is from like 2 days ago. So we'll see what he has to say about that.
I may have watched that already. It should be interesting.
The way you have fun say about how you show up in the world politically. I went to work in Montana, and that was interesting because I was around like a lot of people from a lot of different parts of the country, and a lot of people that were like anti-politics or like, apathetic or hippie political. And I knew that that wasn't my vibe. After
He's
that,
like on
I
a
ended up
date or
moving to
talking to
Seattle.
a therapist.
And this was
Yes.
my experiment with like, I'm going to move across the country. I'm going to see what being a paid organizer is like. I applied to all these jobs.
Now, being a paid organizer, okay? So we hear that Antifa's not an organization, right?
Yeah, just
It's just a series of organizers that are paid. And he's going to go into detail about the fucking organization he was doing and how he was being paid to do it, okay? This is what I really want to highlight. And this is the stuff that is not fun for people to listen to. They don't care about it. This is how 1,000 people show up at a location and burn fucking buildings down. It is because of this organizing that we're allowed, he's allowed to be paid to do it. And how much do you want to bet that the US AID money somehow found its way through NGOs to his quote-unquote organizing on the ground?
Oh yeah, like that's what's funny is like the U.S. just to get off on a brief tangent, the U.S. AID stuff, like mainstream society, like if you're just watching the media or like checking your favorite like sort of like liberal quote unquote influencers online, like none of them have any idea. All they know is they're like, oh, they're trying to take away HIV medication, and it's like, dude, they're literally using these programs to socially engineer queer and trans people in other countries.
In other countries.
In other countries and in the United States. It's literally weaponized against the people of the United States in order to socially engineer this sort of fake consensus to try to push us into their bizarre dystopia where we're all boiled down into bits of like goo. Like
you want to know what's incredible? They talk about climate change a lot in other countries. Weird how none of that went to getting off of fossil fuels in other countries. Isn't that strange how they didn't use that money? Like they have people paying for to reduce their carbon footprint and paying extra money somehow to do that. Yet they use this money in other countries not for climate change, the thing that they claim is impending doom, but it's for fucking mass form psychosis. To indoctrinate people,
literally just exporting
into being not normal.
Exporting Western like homegrown like cognitive dissonance and trying to convert other parts of the world into viewing reality in the way that these people view reality.
Yeah, like
what it really is.
If I see a trans Guatemalan, I just want to go, oh, dude, sorry about that. Our bad.
Really? Yeah,
sorry, dude. My money went to that, dude. Not my intention, but I'm sorry.
We honestly, at this point, we could start talking reparations to the trans Guatemalan.
We're gonna flip it on him. I like that a lot.
Then I ended up getting an offer for a boycott organizer job, either in Seattle or San Francisco. Mind you, both are fucking expensive, but I chose Seattle because it was a little less expensive. And I ended up starting this boycott organizing job, learning a lot, training. I was learning about how to phone bank, how to power map, how to like research an organization and
how to power map and research an organization. Now, he's an organizer. Now, power mapping is essentially what you might think it is in finding out where all of the areas are that you want to target, the areas of interest.
That's seriously what that means. That's wild.
Including people. Oh, I have so much on this that I need to roll out slowly because it's going to be really boring if I just sit there and talk about it. But power mapping is identifying targets. They target people. They openly say that they target people. So let's say it's the CEO of a company and they know he's going to be at a certain place at a certain time, and then that's how they can block him in and shout at him. And they organize it, and they openly talk about it.
Yeah, just all in the open. They're very brazen.
It's very easy to stop. We don't have to create any laws. It's seditious conspiracy. The conspiracy is white supremacy. That meets the criteria of fucking conspiracy. That the country is run by white supremacists. It's blue anon.
It really is.
map out who is in it, how to get phone numbers for people, email addresses, find out where they work. And basically, as a boycott organizer, my job was to support the boycott campaigns against businesses or corporations that weren't signing contracts that did right by the workers. So I was basically paid to like call people again and again and again and be like, are you going to this conference at this hotel in this city?
Could you imagine?
Fucking cancel it and tell your organization never to work with them again because they don't treat their workers right. And I'd do
Holy
this for
shit.
hours and hours out of the week. I'd also go outside of hotels and be a part of picket lines. I'd go outside of stores and be like, are you going into the Jahuli Gardens where they don't treat workers right? Fuck you. I wouldn't actually curse, but you know, you had
His
to like rile
job-
people up.
First off,
paid protesters is an understatement. It's paid organizers.
Yeah, dude. And also that background is totally fake. Nothing has moved. And his job is literally just to be an insufferable prick, which he really seems like he excels at.
Doesn't it seem like a lot of these protesters act like cunts like it's their fucking job?
Yeah, I mean, think about it. I mean, they're just bullies that bully people into submission, threatening to like destroy their livelihoods. It's so fucked up.
Well, I just love it. They're like, no, we're not being paid by George Soros. We're being paid by an NGO that he funds.
Yeah, big difference.
And that was amazing training. It was amazing training because it was my first time in my life where I was taught politically, like, here's the point of antagonism and aggression, but not like violent aggression, but politically direct aggression. And I probably had that job for about 4 or 5 months. And around that time, I also started going to Left Bank Books in Seattle. And Left Bank Books is a leftist.
So I feel like they want to feminize people and then give them aggression and antagonization to do it in a really bitchy way. Like a testosterone-driven man, when he has aggression, it's like a blind rage. But they're like, let's feminize the population first,
Yeah.
and then have them agitate and poke at someone and be really cunty about it.
Honestly, that makes sense. Like, imagine if you're approached by a very aggressive, sort of like testosterone-driven man. It's going to make you want to fight back and tell him to go fuck himself. If you're approached by an aggressive, like domineering, controlling type of woman type of character, she's a woman and she's going to be viewed in a way, and you're going to capitulate more to her actions than you would some man. So that makes sense. That honestly makes sense.
Well, because like a man, if a man says to you, "You're not a man," it's different than if a little bitchy person's like, "You're not even a man."
Yeah, it's like, well, what are you talking about?
It's completely different.
I'm totally gonna stop Ben Shapiro from speaking at this conference hall for you. But it's hilarious, dude. This guy probably hates white women, but he is the prototypical Karen. He's literally just a
He
Karen.
sounds like a white woman.
Yeah, he does. He does.
Oh, I believe it. Later on, he's going to drop an N-bomb, and it's going to. I could drop a better N-bomb than him and have it be more black. Okay.
Bookstore there where you can find all kinds of cool literature that's right there in Park Place. And I remember I started reading Black Seed Journal and reading a little bit about anarchism. And I started reading Crime Think and kind of understanding non-hierarchical ways of like politically organizing and thinking about orienting.
So this is very important for the anarchist organizers. The original one that I know about is Saul Alinsky. And then that was in like the 60s. And then in like the 90s was Lisa Fithian. So he is very reminiscent of them. It's decentralized. So the anarchists are completely decentralized. Communists more so will like look for leaders. Like you think communists are decentralized. The anarchists, not when it comes to theory, specifically when it comes to quote unquote organizing and direct action, they show up to a place. It's like Che Guevara. They very much show up to a place, cause destruction, get the fuck out of there. That's the whole point of the decentralization. So they can just travel around starting fires all over the place.
Yeah, no, and that makes sense. It makes sense. I mean, like in order, because it's funny. I agree with you. Like the communists, they're collective, right? They form a collective, and then they try to work with each other, and that doesn't end up working so well. Whereas meanwhile, you have this guy just coming in, dropping bombs, fucking everything up, which just causes chaos.
All he cares about is tearing down the state. The communists are too preoccupied with other things.
Yeah,
posturing.
He's purely deconstructionist.
Yes, exactly, and that's why they're so dangerous, because they'll get along. Communists and anarchists, in the end, will fight each other. But their common enemy is capitalists. And the anarchists are so good at praxis because they don't call it praxis. They just do it. Communists are so fucking theory-driven that they had to create a word to tell them to do something. Anarchists just go out there, cause chaos, get out. Doesn't that sound like an anarchist? That's why it's so effective. And that's why they work with communists to do it, because they can, in the same way that communists will latch on to a concept, an anarchist can easily latch on to any humanitarian communist cause. And then that anarchist, so Prince Shakur never, ever has to be accountable for anything because he just helps him set it up, and then he takes his hands off of it, and then whatever happens, happens, and then goes on to the next place. So that's what he means by decentralized in this context.
Yeah, makes sense.
Ourselves in the world, and about traveling for free and hitchhiking and being a punk and living nomadically. And it kind of furthered the beatnik fascination I had with like Jack Kerouac and literature, but it melded that with like a political consciousness. And I also, around that time, was fucking hating my job. It was salary. They were overworking us.
Oh, God forbid.
I was kind of like, this is crazy. This is crazy that I'm in a job where I'm helping other people
I
fight
make,
for
I
their
make a
labor
good living.
conditions,
Like,
and I
this is
don't have to say
slavery.
how many
Oh my
hours I
God.
work a week. And so eventually, I think my job caught the drift that I was fucking over it, and they fired me. That was around right before the holidays, 2015, and I was really sad. I was watching a lot of Broad City. I started researching James Baldwin. I ended up going back to Ohio for the holidays, getting another job, which was really cool, as a bank teller and mail person at a place where they serve people without housing. And I learned so much there about mutual aid, about harm reduction, about offering aid to people and not judging them and doing it on their terms. And I did that job for about 6 months. And in those 6 months, I was really kind of questioning, like, why am I paying this much rent? Like,
The aid that he's offering isn't his. So it's very easy to do that when it's not coming out of his own pocket. When he's working at a place that has a budget, it's easy to just go, yeah, money for whatever you want, and I can seem empathetic, and yeah, it's not his money. It's not his resources he's giving out. He doesn't own anything. He's nomadic. So he works at a place that it's like the government that works at a place that has all this money that you are in charge of just distributing to people, so you look like the good guy when it's not your resources.
Yep, and it's funny. It seems like any place that has any sort of like structure, or like basically any organization that has like a decent structure put in, he's like objectively and ideologically opposed to it, and then he just moves on so he could like go cause chaos somewhere else.
Well, nothing's ever good enough. There has to be a struggle. So there's that communist element to it, but it's never good enough for him. He has to think he's creating something so new and innovative and transforming. So I feel like with the anarchists, there's a lot more pontification in terms of the theory and how they talk, and they are much more on the ground, setting it up. That's all they care about. And so like listening to him talk, like I'm getting like some details about him, but then he's like, yeah, I was paid to harass people. Literally paid to harass people.
No.
He's like, nah, it wasn't good enough. I kind of got bored. I couldn't fucking harass him enough.
God.
what do I actually want to be doing right now? What do I want to be doing politically? What could I be learning?
Oh my God, shut the fuck up. I'm fast forwarding it. I can't. I fucking can't, dude. I can't.
What he's saying is so substantive. I can't believe you want to fast forward. It's crazy.
Let's skip to, okay, so this is 2015. So we know that when he was like 14 or 15, Mao, civil rights, radicalization of 14 or 15. In 2015, that's when he got into like James Baldwin, also, you know, early black queer, leftist, communist, anarchist, whatever title he wants to use. But that's when he really started to like implement. So then we have 2020 George Floyd rebellion.
It's also frustrating because like when I look back at like say like a James Baldwin or Malcolm X or any of those kind of individuals, when they say the things that they say in that time period, like to me, I'm like, okay, like I understand being that angry.
Yes.
It's really frustrating to see this asshole say this when things are so good and there's so many opportunities. And then he keeps saying over and over again, he mentions James Baldwin, he uses multiple of his quotes and clips, just like to compare yourself to an individual that embrace communism out of desperation because like you can see that what you view as your people were suffering. It to me, it's different than just being like, I don't know, I'm just like queer and like I just like burning shit down and harassing people.
Patrick,
and,
how
so
would you
frustrating.
Would you have felt the same way about Malcolm X if he was like, I think we should be really weary about white liberals. They're like wolves in sheep's clothing.
Right?
Like how
Right.
would you have taken him if he sounded like that?
I know.
Okay,
It's
so
just,
I wanted to set this up, okay? Because as we're going to be talking about on this podcast for the rest of its existence is the George Floyd riots, right? Quarantine race war 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So that changed everybody. Let's see how it changed this guy, right? He was already fucking geared up for it for like 10 years.
2020 onward is really the era of time that I find
Oh, look
myself
at
in
all-
right now. 2020 was a fucked up year. It was a fucked up year for a lot of different reasons, but it was a fucked up year in terms of the first days of the protests, I think, at least in my city, were really inspiring and moving and wild. And I really was inspired by how many black people showed up, how many people, niggas, were out there with guns saying,
Oh
fuck
my
the
gosh.
police, fuck 12, fuck po-po, like,
Do you know
fuck
that one
police,
meme?
fuck 12, fuck po-po. I really
Hold
loved
on,
it. After that,
hold on.
When he said,
Hold on.
I
need you to take this in. He like stutters when he says popo. He's
really
like,
bad.
fuck the popo, just give me this one clean take right
2020
now.
onward is really the era of time that I find myself in right now. 2020 was a fucked up year. It was a fucked up year for a lot of different reasons, but it was a fucked
Yeah,
up
it was.
year in terms of the first days of the protests, I think, at least in my city, were really inspiring and moving and wild. And I really was inspired by how many black people showed up, how many people, niggas, were out there with guns saying,
Ugh.
fuck the police, fuck 12, fuck po-po, like, fuck the police, fuck 12, fuck po-po. I really loved it.
Wait, pause it. I really loved
Yes!
it. Oh, but dude, I just the way he said the N-word, it's like that gif or meme of the German soldier, how like he's impersonating a German and he holds up the number 3 on his hand, but he holds it up in the wrong way. And it lets the actual German soldier know that he's actually not one of them. That's how that guy just said the N-word.
Well, dude,
Like, you're not from the streets. You never had it rough. You're just a shitty pseudo intellectual
Yes.
looking to co-opt the black populace for your own purposes. So go fuck yourself.
but like he's trying to attach things to blackness, and it's like this is what harms the black community. Is people like this where I know he's black, okay? But that was actual cultural appropriation just then. That was him trying to seem black.
It was.
He's very black. He doesn't sound black. He must get shit about that all the time, trying to talk about black issues. He doesn't fucking sound black.
Yeah. I what he would say right now is that you're policing his blackness, which is just another systemic problem with white supremacy, is what he would tell you.
Oh, you don't want to know what I would say to him?
Nothing mean.
You want to know what I would say to him?
What would you say to him?
That's what I'd say to him.
Right in his face. Right in his face.
Was just day in, day out of March rally. And 2020 was really the time where I think a lot of the people that I knew were like, what is the point of all these marches and rallies? Like, are we demanding anything? Is anything changing? Like, are we really trying to, like, get things done?
We're going to ignore all the murder, billions of dollars in damage, lighting police stations on fire, destroying black-owned businesses. We're going to just go, what are we even... this is why you people... Wow, hey, look at this trained organizer being like, so what are we doing? Are we throwing rocks through a TD bank window? Or what are we doing exactly?
I know. I just don't understand how they can't see, like, how this individual can't see. Well, I guess he just
Well, that's
wants to make
reactionary.
things worse.
If you
Yeah,
do
but
anything against the revolution, it's reactionary.
Yeah, and plus, I mean, he wants to make things worse because the worse they are, the more chaos there is, which personally benefits him because of his ideological stances.
Oh, the anarchists get off on chaos. It's gross.
Yeah.
Or like, what is the point? There are a lot of different ways that I could judge 2020, but I think one, it was amazing to see the capacity at which the American public could show up when we were at home in lockdown. And granted, maybe a lot of people were just bored.
You know, people just bored. It wasn't like the media was sending signals to everyone to run out in the fucking streets or anything. It wasn't like
and
it
the
wasn't
Democrats.
They were like, you can't work, you can't go to school, you can protest all you want though. Oh, there was none of that there. It was organic. It was like, wow, this organic movement.
Imagine being someone who can't visit their dying grandmother, but then they tell you that white supremacy is like a huge health threat, so you're allowed to protest and riot, but you can't visit your dying grandmother. Imagine how that person feels. Imagine how they feel.
All right, you're taking me for a detour right now. What's this time at? Remember George Floyd's funeral? There was a live stream and it was 4 hours long, and people didn't even have masks on.
I vaguely do I remember this.
Look,
holy shit!
They talk about demoralization, dude. George Floyd's funeral, celebrities showed up. People didn't have masks on. That was peak demoralization. I had to show that because I've thought of that ever since I fucking saw it.
Yeah.
Since I wasn't really in a particular organizing group at that time, I was just kind of like operating off of the different crews that I know. So you'd block up for whatever particular march or rally you were going to, making sure that you were covered up, that you didn't have any identifiable things exposed. Then you'd go. And I remember there was one rally I went to where the route of the march was confusing. And then the march ended and we literally went to this street where there were cops and journalists. And the people that were organizing that march like led us as people in the crowd to talk to the cops about why the city was improving so it could end up on the news. And I was just thinking, like, is this about abolition or is this about a photo opportunity or about the optics? And I started reading about counterinsurgency. And for those who don't know, counterinsurgency is literally when there are revolutionary movements or mobilizations happening and the state or the state's allies try to implant people within movements that are more aligned with the state's values, or it's newer people that maybe don't know as much about how cops lie or about different theories of change or skepticisms around reform, that they are able to be enfolded more into the state's logic because they're newer and they might believe in what the state is offering in terms of a solution. And what the solutions at the time looked like were a citizens committee to overlook police misconduct, which I don't even know if it really fucking did anything in Columbus. And really out of 2020,
he's constantly deconstructing. What's your fucking solution? Oh, just get rid of it. Then what? You dickhead.
I know.
It's so easy. It's honestly, it's angsty teenager syndrome. Tear it all down with no fucking solutions.
Yeah, he doesn't know what he wants done. He just knows that he doesn't like the thing. It's just frustrating because he's like, oh, these people, they don't know about the state and the state. Like the whole George Floyd thing, like COVID race war, was literally a state functioned operation.
Right.
The fact that he thinks that he's somehow like working opposite of the state is it's so hilarious because
what
his entire life is just a lie.
What he said is true about the January 6th protesters. That's the fucking extreme irony. Where like out of, I think there's 13,000 FBI agents, 5,000 were at January 6th.
Wait, I thought it was that they were investigating January 6th.
I'm sorry. Investigating. You're right. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
investigating January 6th. Yeah.
Yeah, like this huge allocation of FBI officers investigating a riot, and then there was like some coordination maybe happening, but the majority of those people were just there and shit got out of hand, and then there's a bunch of other people that just walked into a building. Yeah, the
investigating. The amount of state power going toward prosecuting those people, and he's acting like that was some modicum of that was happening. Actually, you want to know what? There was infiltration of federal employees that were on their side. Right? That was the state. State was on their side. It wasn't counterinsurgency. It was counterinsurgency.
Yeah, and this is a common trope amongst leftists. They have no idea what the state is. Like they don't like it. It's like they don't understand that it's this all-encompassing. It's hilarious. I'm going to use their phrase, system. It seems as if they think that it's just like political actors. And they have no idea that they're actual unknowing agents of the state they claim to hate. There's no self-awareness with leftists at all.
What do I do? And how do I lend a hand? And I think one of the biggest lessons I learned around that time was the importance of security culture. Security culture meaning a series of behaviors or processes that you can build into your organizing spaces or political spaces that protect you from state surveillance. And this might be light forms of vetting, it might be encrypted forms of messaging, it might be only letting people know the details they need to know about a particular action that might be coming up soon.
I never see any of this like footage or communications from January 6th protesters, you know? I never see this level of organization so brazenly admitted to. Like, yeah, so we're going to have to hide what we're talking about because what we're doing is illegal.
Yeah. Also, it's funny. He's like, I love how he's acting as if he has to hide from state actors, as if the state just isn't funding his organizations. It's hilarious.
Right.
That they may or may not have a red, green, or yellow roll-in. Because at the time I was just thinking, like, the more of my direct work that I'm putting online, the more of a disservice I'm doing to myself in terms of the state's capacity to observe and watch me and understand exactly what I'm doing. And so a lot of folks I knew...
So it's like he has to talk in code constantly, right? He kind of has to couch a lot of his speech and really be implicative in his tone and really try to bore you to death with what he's saying so you kind of don't want to listen to it. But then, you know, every once in a while he'll tell you exactly what he means. Yep. I still can't believe that he talked about being paid to politically harass people.
I know. It's rather shameless. Because, I mean, he is, like, especially, if you listen to him, a lot of the times it sounds like gobbledygook, but to us, it's very clear that he's literally just saying that he gets paid to, like, burn shit and, like, fuck shit up. That's all he's saying. He's actively, like, giving the game away. Well, trying to hide it.
Well, so we're at the tail end of getting to know him, and we're going to get into direct action next. But it's obviously going to be prefaced by a fucking monologue that I'll try and speed through.
We were reading up about Signal, about encrypted email, about different ways of sharing large files or information, about how to securely share certain kinds of literature that can let people know what they need to do for a particular protest. And 2020 was a while. I eventually got through the protests. I finished my book, or 2021 rolled around, and I finished my book, and I was kind of thinking towards what next. By that point, I'd been living in Columbus for a few years. I was kind of like, I don't really need to live here anymore. And I ended up moving to New York in 2022 and kind of leaving my home and my scene, going on book tour, meeting people in New York. And all that I really say about New York on a direct action level was that I don't think I found a way to dig enough into the organizing scene there. I think I was very new, very green, very fresh. I was trying to figure out how to live, how to work, how to meet other...
You see how he just keeps moving to another area and tries to infiltrate and get them really pissed off and take to the streets?
He must be a horrifically lonely individual. I can't even imagine.
Well, he's just constantly moving. Well, it must be hard to like foster a connection with anybody when he's always just thinking about him. Like the way he talks about himself must be how he talks to other people. So, So like detractors will say, they're like, oh, well, no, he's making a video, so obviously he's going to be talking about himself. Not in this way and not to this fucking extent, dude.
No, he's literally just being himself right here. I guarantee this is how he is in his everyday life.
Artists, but I don't think I ever got deep into like any particular political spaces. And some of that was maybe the saturation of the city. Some of that was just maybe the people that I knew. I'm not really sure. I've actually met people.
Actually, so he goes to like Ohio or he goes to like Montana. He cannot compete. When quarantine race war was happening, in 2020, other people were overshadowing him when he didn't like that. That's what it sounds like. So he'll go to like smaller areas, like in Ohio. He can run shit in smaller areas, so he like really prefers that.
Yeah, what is it? He wants to be a big fish in a small pond.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah, right. Yeah. He's like, like nobody was giving me like a bunch of attention the entire time, and I didn't seem like the smartest person in the room, so it didn't. I can't listen to him. All right, I can't.
Well, he speaks just like a white college girl who ends every sentence in the form of a question, even if it's like a declarative statement.
He has Valley Girl up talk, which a lot of gay men do.
Yeah,
but not this level of pretension. Okay, so let's flash forward to his video from 2 days ago.
Yeah, so right here, this is my first introduction to him, and the black and white, the aesthetics here are so much better than anything else he does. As soon as like more of him is revealed, I just want to see less. This, like
Yeah,
right here, I
yeah,
was
right,
like,
right.
right here, I was literally like, all right, man, like let's burn some shit. Maybe we'll see what happens, you know. But then he started talking more, and I was like, never mind.
So why we need direct action, okay? This is why we need it. In every video, he's just talking about the same things the whole time, every time. But this one's going to be different.
Mexican border to do a month of humanitarian aid work. And this experience was transformative. I've gone to the US-Mexican border before and I've written about it in the past, but this month of volunteering, doing work in a way that is really indebted to harm reduction, looking at the ways, once again, how immigration and Border Patrol and ICE are systems of carcerality and should be abolished, and thinking.
So he doesn't think anyone should ever be arrested, is what it sounds like. It sounds like there's never a justifiable reason to arrest somebody.
Yeah, I don't know what his.
You're talking about border enforcement and people trying to illegally cross the fucking border. They have to be detained.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, that's the thing. His entire model is just nonsense. How do you account for the people that are trafficked across the board? How do you account for the sex slaves and the drugs? Like, he has no concern for any of this. All that matters is that the state is incarcerating people. That's all that matters to him.
Well,
It's so cartoony.
I just love you. You would think he would have been basking in the glory of unification and camaraderie during the 2020 riots. He was like, yeah, I didn't really like it because he wasn't the star of the show.
Yeah. Now he's a person that will. There's a certain level of not being content with some things that can be good when you're trying to build towards something, you
Right.
have a different challenge. But I mean, he's a person that will never be content with anything at any given moment ever.
Thinking of the modes of organizing that can help us help other people, and also dismantle the systems that will inevitably do violence against us. Just because I'm a Black American citizen and I'm the child of immigrants doesn't mean that I shouldn't care about
He didn't say he was
immigration,
queer.
or Border Patrol, or ICE, or changing policies. It rather means that I have the historical context and time and space.
They're time scientists. The historical
really are.
context and time and space.
It's always time and space. He has to say the word space at least once every video. It's
Well,
always time and space.
I know, but so my theory on the space verbiage is they don't kill people, they seize your land. They're very land-driven people. So, like, an anti-Jew is anti-person. An anti-Zionist is anti-they have that land.
Yeah.
They take up
yeah.
space. They want to take up space. That's how they encroach.
Yeah. They want to take space from people that are living in spaces that are taking up too much space.
Hey, what you said was structurally, systematically sound.
That is the scientific method of the time scientists. That's what that is.
To understand that mutual aid as a form of direct action is one of the most tangible and entryway forms of direct.
See here, listen to him talk. This was my introduction to him. This is the video you sent me. He comes across so much better right here. It doesn't come across like some like freaking like he's not speaking in like upspeak. He's not speaking in Valley Girl. Like this is what he should do. This is all he should do because to me it's the most charismatic he's been. Everything else is very cringe and makes me just want to shut it off. I mean, this is still terrible.
But I don't want
it's better aesthetics.
I don't want that to overshadow a very important rhetorical point, which is mutual aid as a form of direct action. So mutual aid is like giving people food, right? And like the way they define direct action is however they have to define it as they need it. But mutual aid as a form of direct action suggests that mutual aid isn't direct action. And he's doing a little synthesizing right there. So this is how we can turn nonviolence into violence. Nonviolence as a form of violence. Mutual aid as a form of direct action.
Yeah, and it's also like sort of like the sort of anarcho-communist, whatever you want to say, leftist playbook. It's not about mutual aid. It's not about the aid you're giving each other. It's about you're giving each other aid in the effort of some grander plan. There always has to be, there's something else underlying it to get to the end that they want to achieve.
Right, giving each other aid while giving us all AIDS.
Yes. It's why they hate charity. They hate just the idea of giving people food.
Mutual aid is charity.
Nice. Yeah, no, you have to give them food so
for a political purpose.
Like, burn everything. Yeah,
it has to be for a political purpose. Yeah, right.
So dark.
They always and that's we didn't go into too much detail because it's too long, but that's with the civil rights movement. This is how they use a humanitarian effort to then completely bastardize it and turn their back on it. Which could
correct.
most quickly be seen with how the black businesses were being destroyed during the Floyd riots.
Yeah, it's just property.
Right.
Action that we can utilize in our current context with the oncoming Trump administration, with inevitable policies and bills that will strip away the rights of people and endanger the lives of the marginalized. Thinking about the fact that so many state agencies are currently up for being completely washed away or diluted. And what will we do when the state inevitably fails us? What will we do when our hospital systems,
Is he an anarchist or not?
I was just gonna say, shouldn't he freaking be getting burning boner over this? Like, I don't understand. Like, they're burning shit to the ground. Like, be happy. Be happy. This is he should be experiencing queer joy right now. I don't understand.
Right, because he's an anarchist, and all he does is destroy. He never has a solution, and he's like, here's a solution. What are we gonna do? It's always short term. Let's completely upend society first, and then we'll be free to panic and not know what we're going to do.
Hey, you figure it out. You figure it out later.
Our educational systems, when our social services do not step up, and inevitably the gaps and the harm and the exploitations that already exist will get worse.
When our social services don't step up, so that's government, give people everything they need to be alive, is how I interpret that. So when our social services don't step up, it's so general and it's so vague. Like, what do you want done? He's not going to say, I want the government to give everyone everything they need, because I guess he's an anarchist, but he seems very state sympathetic.
He is. And like, at the end of the day, he's just another commie. So that makes sense. But it seems like the anarchy angle is like purely like, it's almost like a subconscious type of identity, I think, because he can't build anything. He can never probably maintain long-term relationships.
Right.
So I feel like he's just projecting his own like bizarre inadequacies and shortcomings onto the world and pretending it's a political ideology.
He feels like nothing's going to work politically because nothing works personally and interpersonally with him.
Yeah, everything is projection.
This is how mutual aid and direct action can help us. So in this video, we're going to take some time to talk about what direct action is in general.
I started to look for treatments to help save my life.
I wish they'd shut their mouths and get their mentality out of their crotches.
There was nothing coming out of our government's efforts.
But no, they march in the streets. They defy.
This is what he put in. It just goes direct action 101, and then it's fucking AIDS activists out of nowhere.
All I know is the next time anyone makes me mad, I'm going to tell them to shut their mouth and get their mentality out of their crotch. That's what I'm going to say. Well, next time my mom pisses me ooff, I'll be like, listen.
Isn't that such a conservative thing to say at that?
It really is.
He was meeting the moment, okay? He was being as polite as humanly possible about something he vehemently disagreed with.
So funny.
you.
I decided to become a full-time AIDS activist.
The whole world is watching. The whole world is watching. Right. You can not illegally come into the country, and you can also not give each other AIDS. These are things that are preventable, that they're like battling back against.
I was just going to say, I could see in the early stages of the AIDS epidemic, and you don't really know what's going on. You don't know, like, how is it passed? But, like, at this point, it's like, just stop peeing into each other's eyes, and, like, then you won't get AIDS. It was like, do you remember when the monkey?
Yeah, I remember when Freddie Mercury said that. Absolutely.
Yeah, he said that at Live Aid. There was when monkeypox first came about, and they were freaking out, but then they realized that it was literally just being passed around in like queer orgies.
Right.
So the government underneath Biden's, whoever is running Biden, his aides or whatever, they were like, how do we tell queer people to stop having piss and shit orgies so they'll stop passing monkeypox? They try to do it in the most politically correct way. It was so funny.
Dude, like, do you know what PrEP is?
It's like a thing that's supposed to prevent STDs from like anal sex or something.
And you want to know how you know that's what it's for? You know how sometimes you see a commercial and you go, what was that commercial for? I saw a commercial and there was a bunch of queer black people on it, and I was like, oh, it's probably a PrEP commercial. And it was.
Yeah, that's actually what's funny with
who
the
they
new
show in that commercial is definitely nailing the demographic that needs to hear it.
Well, that's what's hilarious is that for years it was like considered homophobic to say that majority of people that get these diseases are like gay queer people, but now every commercial leans into it, and like 3/4 of the people that are on the commercial are gay.
PrEP may be the first gay drug ever administered by the fucking pharmaceutical companies. Okay, I don't know how many straight people are taking PrEP.
It's hilarious, dude, because everything we're saying is just what conservatives gays say. They're like liberal and leftist gays stop peeing into each other's mouths, and you won't get it. Like I love when the conservative gays come out against it. It's so awesome.
What I love is that people might think that you think AIDS is passed on by pee. It's the only jokes that you've made.
First off,
it's just pee.
First off, okay. Because the nature of reality and how subjective it is, you can't prove that it isn't passed by peeing each other's eyes. Okay, you can't prove it, so fuck you.
Hey, I'm not going to conduct those studies. All right, I'm sure the left will. They have a study for everything.
That was probably one of the things that U.S. aid was going for. It was just called U.S. AIDS, though.
It was right there. That should have been mine. It was right there.
I mean, dude, the lowest hanging fruit.
Someday there will be a people alive on this earth who will hear the story that once there was a terrible disease.
And the only way that we're going to have those people is by straight people breeding with each other. The only way there's ever going to be future... Doesn't he sound like future generation of... Like, yeah, the straights are making the gays. You need the straights to make them. But he's speaking like, we're going to exist. And it's like, well, yeah, but not because of you.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it is up to the straights.
Generations of gays. And it's like, that's not how it works. I'm sorry, dude. You don't get the hetero shit.
Yeah, that's why it's so the whole queer movement is so goofy, just because it's so obvious that like heteronormativity is just how nature is set up. You don't even have to believe in a god. It's just very clear that it is dominant, and it should be dominant because it's how society progresses. It's literally how humans populate the earth. So like the suggestion that it's not is so obtuse and insane. It's crazy, but they don't believe in empirical reality. They don't believe in nature. They want to conquer nature and become lords over it. Not gay people. I mean, leftists.
When do you think the phrase heteronormativity was introduced into popular lexicon? What year?
I don't know. Well, I mean, I was gonna say like the 60s or whatever.
1991.
That's when it. Wait, is that when the term was created, or is it when it became popular?
It's when it was coined.
Interesting.
Right?
Wow, I can't believe it was that recent.
That's a late game one.
Yeah, I guess...
So in 1975, compulsory heterosexuality.
Are you serious?
So heteronormative is the end point of things that came from the 60s and 70s, and they settled on heteronormative. So we're using their language once again when we say heteronormative.
That is hilarious. That makes sense, too, because it's like these kinds of terms, like the spirit of the term has existed for a long time. They just finalized it in 91. That's wild. I didn't know that.
I just looked it up right now because I'm like, when did this, because you said heteronormative, and I'm like, yeah, obviously. Yeah,
I know.
That's how we're alive. Why is it a phrase?
It's also frustrating because it's like, well, it's like if you're gay, then it's like, cool, man. Like, revel in the fact, if you want to frame it, like use cognitive behavioral therapy on yourself. Revel in the fact that you're different and you exist outside of norms, just like sex-based norms, roles, and stereotypes. Like take pleasure in the fact that you are special if you want to view yourself that way. Like viewing yourself as normal takes away that. Like I feel like there's a way where it can be reframed to destroy the queer plus movement. Like there's a way where it can be reframed to get rid of it.
I would 100 times out of 100 prefer a regular gay guy to a straight guy that's into feet. Okay, there's plenty of things. There's plenty of weird things that people are into. Okay.
Yeah, I don't get the feet thing. I don't get it.
I've known 2 men that were into feet, and both of them fucking were weird and sucked.
I can't.
But that's an offline conversation.
And that a brave group of people stood up and fought, and in some cases died, so that others might live and be free.
I love this song.
They died so that others might live. Not really on purpose. That's kind of like a post hoc rationalization of what happened. It wasn't like they were like getting experimented on and like, oh, maybe this will like, well, yeah, right. you did the thing first, and then they're trying to find a solution.
Yeah, although I mean, props to them for using Adagio in D minor, one of my favorite orchestra pieces. It's so good.
All right, so what is direct action and why it's so dang important? Here we go.
Gee Willikers.
It really is important to ground us in the fact that this contemporary moment is really all the evidence we need to confront the fact that mutual aid and direct action is going to be necessary. The rising tide of climate change, the oncoming Trump administration, which will inevitably lead to economic disenfranchisement and social rights being stripped away from marginalized communities. And
social rights. Did you fucking hear that?
Yeah,
if you hear social democrat, communist, social liberal, anytime they 100%, add social,
100%.
It is socialist. Every single time. What are social rights? Going into a bathroom when you're a man? Going to a woman's bathroom when you're a man? Is that a social right?
A social right is a privilege that he wants bestowed onto his personal favorite groups.
Yes.
That's all that is.
Absolutely.
I'm excited. I'm very excited. I can't, honestly, I never thought I'd say this, but I'm really excited for this guy's next video. I want to hear him really freak out about the quote-unquote anti-trans EO that Trump has been putting out there. I'm excited for that.
You're waiting
That's
for that.
That's why I watch Vosh. I've been watching Vosh strictly because he's freaking out. It's great.
And the ramifications for quality of life is endless. And mutual aid is one of the ways that we can do this, and so is direct action. So first, we need to define what is direct action. And in outlining this video, I've debated with so many people, and we've debated, but what is direct action? Are marches and rallies a form of direct action? What about petitioning? What about voting? And
I love how he's about to define direct action while also tacitly admitting that he can't even agree on what direct action is with the people that he talks to. So it's something that none of them can agree on what a definition is of direct action. But let him define it for you from his own narcissistic perspective.
Yeah.
They can't even agree on it. There is no definition of it. So before I tell you the definition, let me just tell you that I've argued with a lot of people and like, we can't really agree on it, but here's what it is.
Yeah, well, when truth is subjective, the definitions of things shift from situation to situation, so they can never agree upon anything.
We are going to take some time to talk about this because it's very important, and I'm probably going to revisit defining this in different videos throughout this series.
You're going to keep defining
what is
it.
direct action?
Ooh,
direct action is a form of political activity.
The hellfire.
Go back to the black. Look at it. It's immediately vibe shift, and it's just bad. Not a fan.
That aims to confront a political or social wrong through the political force exerted by one or a group of people. A political activity that
by one or a group of people. So why not just say people?
Because he is the one who will instill this into the people, is why.
Yes, one or a group.
Yeah, it's hilarious, Like, I wish he would take this individualistic, narcissistic nature and aim it in a different direction. That'd be great.
Has a political target and is attempting to address or remedy a social wrong. It usually has a demand and can involve one or many people. And the reason
So I'm sorry. Okay, so Patrick, what's the definition of direct action exactly? No wonder why they can't agree on it.
I know, it's just gobbledygook. I mean, it makes sense when you understand their language, but
he's speaking in gypsy curses.
Like, you have to, like, you think about it, right? Like, imagine if, like, a shit lib were to be like, huh, let's see if these guys really are crazy. They'll come away from this being just like, well, they just seem like a couple
very
of
reasonable.
Yeah, they just seem like a couple of nice black folk advocating for their own people. I don't see any wrong with, like, they have no mechanism by which to decipher what he's saying.
I define this definition the way that I do is that I think direct action is different, like very distinctly from other forms of political activity. And I want to read a few definitions to kind of break this down a little bit more. Definition one was from the direct.
So they can't agree on a definition. And let me tell you several definitions. And let me let you know, I'm going to be expanding on these definitions in future videos.
It's amazing.
And that's what this video is about. Direct action 101. That's direct imagine you're in a 101 class, and in the 101 class of whatever you're supposed to learn, the professor says, yeah, so me and the other professors cannot agree on what it is, so let me give you a definition. And actually, let me give you two definitions. And actually, the definitions I'm going to give you are going to morph over the course of the like, that's
right?
not, how is that 101? That is not what 101 means at all.
Wait till you get to the 300 level class on terrorism.
We're already there.
Action movement. Direct action is a category of activism in which participants act directly, ignoring established or institutionalized political and social procedures, operating within the boundaries of laws and demonstrating peacefulness are not elements of direct action.
Right.
Examples of direct action are strikes, boycotts, sabotage, blockades, tree sits, black bloc, obtaining secret footage, lock-ons, and riots, or a combination of methods like a planned march or lock-on, etc. Definition number 2 that defines direct action. Both of these definitions are really important. I think the commonality in them is that they talk about participants acting directly through their own bodies and their own resources. It talks about turning against indirect methods like lobbying or voting. And
you know, we're against voting, and we really want to just take to the streets illegally.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it means he's a quote-unquote anarchist, so he literally doesn't believe in voting. He wants to destroy the entire system. Why would you vote? Why would you participate in the system?
How does a shit lib contextualize this? So go back to being a shit lib. How do you contextualize this and nod your head to it?
I think that you would basically understand his position as a marginalized person.
Okay.
And that he's advocating for things that would influence your more mainstream liberal movement and could be incorporated into a way that's palatable to you, is how a shitlib would see this.
Yeah. Wow. That was very succinct.
I've had so much experience.
Towards being disruptive. And I think what's interesting in describing direct action is that I think the more that radical action has been co-opted by the mainstream, some ideas or conceptions of direct action.
That's like when they say, what is it? When like Pfizer puts a fucking rainbow in their logo. What do they call it? What do they say? Like queer. They call it queer capitalism.
Yeah.
Like they call it something like that, where it's basically like the corporations co-opt their movement in order to like push like merch on the public.
I love that criticism, by the way, because they definitely mean it. The corporations don't mean it, but they really mean it. Yeah, right? Okay. None of you mean it. Exactly.
It's also really funny because like none of these people realize that all of their beliefs are completely like the entire thing is a complete like top down ideology being forced onto the populace, and these guys have no idea about where this stuff comes from. Pushed by like UNESCO,
all of their
United Nations.
All of their ideology is white. All of their ideology is so white.
It's white. It's mostly thought of by like white and Jewish intellectuals in like the most privileged people in the world came up with these
aren't
ideologies.
Workers that are not workers.
Yeah, no, they're like they literally are like the bourgeoisie or whatever, like
petite bourgeoisie.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but it's just so funny that they think they're revolutionaries, and yet they push the most privileged type of ideologies that could only come about when a society gets comfortable enough and people look around and be like, you just want to burn some shit.
Well,
Like, it's so stupid.
but that's the funny part, is that communism can only happen because of capitalism.
Yeah.
As it's written, communism only happens because once capitalism has all of these resources, communists just want to go, oh, we need to seize those resources. And it's like, okay, well, once you get rid of capitalism, you no longer have the generation of resources that you seized.
Yes, it's honestly the same thing with queer. Once you queer everything, then your queer
Normal.
identity,
Then you're normal.
Yeah,
When you queer
it becomes
everything.
normal, and then it has to be queered again. That's why, like, imagine if like the food trucks stopped coming in the city for a while. You think that these people are going to be wandering around, like some guys can be like, for my gender, and then they're going to fucking eat him and steal his food. It's the only modernity could bring about
Yes.
this sort of pampered ideology and have it pose as like a revolutionary concept.
Well,
it's
so
funny.
But modernity is the critique of liberalism. This
Yeah.
will be hidden in, like, this is what brought us here, and then the example of liberalism will be the Civil Rights Act, which is not liberal at all whatsoever. It was very driven by communists, but that's for a different podcast.
Yeah.
As we see it contemporarily, are kind of less disruptive. They kind of do align more with the status quo, like marches and rallies. But other forms of direct action can be seen as more understood to be direct action, more tangibly tied to being antagonistic or resisting a certain kind of institution or political entity, like
And that's such
blockades
bullshit.
or strikes.
Like, I know it's like a cliche, but it is literally true that like white, affluent, like liberals and other people saw black people getting sprayed by fucking hoses, and they were like, maybe we'll listen to him for a minute. Like what he's saying is just not fucking. It's aggravating. I hate him.
Well, it sounds like he's successfully being antagonistic, doesn't it? Don't you feel antagonized? He's talking about antagonization, and people don't necessarily know how that manifests. It's not just physically. We're in a Cold War. We're in a psychological war. And it's saying things that are obviously mischaracterized constantly, and you see it on X. Oh, so hard. So hard by quote-unquote normal Democrats engaging in this level of like untruths and mischaracterizations about anything that's happening. They did it with the Don't Say Gay bill. Like, that was mainstream Democrats that were calling it Don't Say Gay when that wasn't in it.
I've talked to mainstream Democrats, like normie progressives, and when push comes to shove, they will embrace every insane ideology that the extreme portions of the left push forward. When push comes to shove, like deep down, there's no difference there. Like, that programming runs deep. I literally had one guy, I proved to him that Michael Brown was a scam, and that it, like, you know what I mean? Like, not that he deserved to die, but the shooting was justified, and I proved it to him. He literally told me that that's good because essentially the ends justify the means.
Consequentialist,
like
yeah.
Yeah, that is an extremely like
that's an extreme view.
Yes, and there's no consideration. There's no consideration for the fact that half the country understands it was a lie, and that they're literally using it to foment racial tension. Like, there's no consideration of that.
It's not happening, but if it is, it's okay. Like, fucking to a T. Every time.
Nobody else will understand what I'm saying, but I'm just thinking of Black Pill Frank right now. But continue.
or sit-ins. In some of the qualities I wrote down, because this was a really interesting kind of thought experiment for me, the first quality I wrote down is has a specific target and or demands the power or political autonomy of the individual and collective involved. Direct action is very focused. It usually has a set demand. If you are protesting outside of your police headquarters, and
he never says what a target is when he goes and
it's
does
anything.
something.
It's a politician, it's a business, it's
so
an
he's always
institution.
talking about something. So what's his target? But he also said that he wants to hide that when he's making content online. So he's being very vague intentionally by his own admission. Because he wants to talk about these things online in a hidden way, as he admitted earlier.
I would love to get a peek into his private Telegram chats. That would be hilarious. Imagine, because like we're watching this and we're like, wow, mask off, insane anarcho-communist terrorist.
And that's front-facing.
Behind closed doors.
Yeah.
Imagine what he says behind closed doors. Imagine.
and you are yelling about police brutality, that kind of could be considered direct action, but what makes it more of a direct action is if you are yelling about the police chief who recently said something fucked up at a press conference after a police murder happened, and the protesters are demanding the resignation of the police chief, and maybe they lock down on the doors. So there's a specific target. It demands and respects the...
Maybe you falsely imprison someone. You know, let's see what happens. We'll see what happens.
Dude, that was him covering his own ass. He was like, how can I say these radical things? Oh, I'll just say in maybe. And then and then it's plausible deniability.
Yeah, exactly. It's adorable, honestly. I want to pinch his cheeks.
Political autonomy of the individuals involved. So maybe you do show up with specific roles, but those roles can change based on the context of the direct action or how the state or your opposing
for instance,
responds.
For instance, the context of the direct action, right? At first, you just want to approach somebody. However, if they run, you have to chase them down. If you get them into a room and you don't want them to leave, you have to corner them in there and then lock them in there. You know, the situation evolves as it goes on, apparently. You know, he's like a rapist. Like, what do you do when a woman fights back? You know? Yeah.
So now we're seeing how organized this is. Extremely organized, and
Yeah,
it's
he
funded
jumped
by
right to it.
NGOs. And this is what it looks like. So he describes the process. We've seen how he's grown up, talking about his advocacy and talking about being a paid organizer. And then he shows footage like this, where it's like, this is easy to prevent. They are talking about going out in the streets and disrupting society. They are talking about being antagonistic. They are talking about hiding their methods, because they never say they know it's illegal, but they talk about hiding their methods, and they bring up being agitating, which agitating isn't illegal. But if you are going there with the intention of doing something, with how the left prosecutes people on the right, I just feel like it wouldn't be overstepping to involve a level of premeditation that you're going to go to a protest with a set plan politically to shut down a road or a property of government. I don't know. It's very straightforward, but there's never any conversation about how openly they're allowed to discuss how they're going to break laws, and it drives me crazy.
It's very frustrating. The thing that frustrates me is that I love my gays, and it's very annoying that so many of them have been co-opted into this insanity. They're if you ever just hang out with just gay dudes, they're just really sarcastic and hilarious.
They're hilarious. The gay dudes, regular gay dudes, are the fucking funniest people in the entire world. Yeah. It's they're never off the clock. So we've been politically groomed into thinking that blocking traffic is acceptable protesting.
Yeah.
So you can't. We already have laws where you can't do that.
Yeah,
you can't block.
Literally,
we just have to enforce existing laws. You cannot. The police should be. We're just protesting. No, you're blocking the street. Your feet. If you get hit by a car, that's your fault. That's where your feet are right now.
What happens if an ambulance has to get through and somebody has to go to the hop? None of that is taken into account.
But they let them block.
Well,
think
about it though. The optics of a bunch of majority white cops forcefully removing black people from the streets. The optics, even if they're breaking the law, and especially under the pretenses that they're protesting, mass discrimination. I can't even imagine being these cops in this scenario. What do you do?
You need to go to the sidewalk.
Just please.
It's going down on your watch.
But treat us like humans.
Don't look down.
Like animals. Don't beat us like dogs when you do arrest us.
I ain't letting none of you fast forward to the end.
We will continue to fight for our rights.
Listen to that beat.
Continue to fight for our rights.
I love the irony of treat us like humans and not like animals as she screams like a fucking banshee. It's poetry. It's absolute fucking poetry, dude.
It's also really because like I know cops and like there's racist cops and there's not racist cops. But like a cop goes into his day, unless he's a psychopath, being like, man, I hope it goes well today and like nobody does any crazy shit. Like they just portray them as if they're out there hunting people. And that's not I mean, yeah, cops sit in speed traps and hope they catch people speeding for like an easy ticket, but they're not going out there wanting to go to war with people. They just want to do their jobs and say hi to their families in most instances.
I know, but the political grooming of our society is that when the left goes out and quote unquote non-violently protests and they're screaming and they're, to their own admission, being antagonistic, trying to agitate people, that's different than Steven Crowder going to a campus and having a conversation. Is he being agitating and antagonistic? The answer is only yes, because they view his existence as antagonism, which is different than screaming at somebody. Like they can't stand that Ben Shapiro can go to a college, Candace Owens, Charlie Kirk, have all these clips online where they can just go and have anyone ask them questions and be able to answer them. But the left wants to protest, and we view that as liberal. But what's liberal is what Steven Crowder does, and Candace Owens, and anyone, and Ben Shapiro, Charlie Kirk, anyone that goes and has a conversation in public. That is liberal. I don't understand what's liberal about taking up space. A liberal with private property rights would not seek to take up space in that way. They would seek to take up space in a more legal way. They wouldn't try to invade. It's non-aggression principle. It's not liberal to block a street and scream at police. That's not liberal, but communists have attached that to the identity of being liberal.
Yeah, I'm okay if you in protest whatever you want and stuff, but if you're like actively blockading people in and stopping their ability
take
to
up
get
space.
Places, yeah. But it's like that.
They're colonizers. They're space colonizers.
They're space colonizers and time scientists. But like, I mean, that cop was literally like his whole vibe was like, "Hey guys, it's cool. Just can you get on the sidewalk, please?"
Right.
You know?
That was the oppressive white supremacist police officer going, "Oh, guys, could you please take it to the sidewalk for a moment?
Please, like, it's fine. Like, I like Tyler Perry movies. It's cool.
I know, I understand what white supremacists, but can we, cut the malarkey for a second and move it onto the sidewalk?"
Malarkey.
The essence of direct action is that it requires a level of commitment to disrupting the existing political or social order. It's not just about voicing dissatisfaction. It's about using political force
disrupting,
to make
agitation, antagonizing.
Felt. And this is so important because I think this speaks to the antagonistic nature of direct
there
action.
There it is.
Like if you are handing out flyers outside of a church and it's about an event at the church, I wouldn't consider that direct action. It needs to be something that shows itself as antagonistic or oppositional to the decision maker or the decision making institution. And that institution can be a city council member, it can be a politician, it can be a local business owner, it can be an administrator at an institution, it can be an entire corporation or an entity or an organization or a government or a state. Direct action is intent on naming who the decision maker and the person who is hoarding the resources and the power in that certain situation and using political action to confront and show that dissatisfaction.
Some guy
targeting.
Running...
He's talking about politically targeting people.
He even says, like, he actually says small business owner. Some dude who's like selling tchotchkes at the local convenience mart who runs the business, that man needs to be targeted because he's participating in a system that is systemically oppressing him.
But they're talking about politically targeting people and blocking the roads. I feel like we have existing laws that would prevent that.
Yeah, you'd think. So that sort of seems like a large problem of ours. We have laws. We literally have we have every possible law in place that can stop the majority of this kind of shit.
Yeah, but they want you to think. But the whole point of that is to create chaos, create anarchy, and then say that we have to change the system. And it's like, no, we could just implement existing laws. It's pretty easy. Trump's already doing it with immigration. It's actually very straightforward.
Well, and that's why the Democrats have garnered the favor of these different minority groups, because if you're a minority group, you're viewed as less privileged, and so like certain rules of like decency and what's the word I'm looking for, decorum, like they don't apply to you as much because
you're mad, righteous indignation.
Yeah, and they kind of worship these groups, so they let them get away with more than they would any other group, which actually ends up hurting this group. So,
well, they don't even worship the group. They act like they worship the group, and that like they acted like they worshipped women until the whole trans thing happened. They're just all of them are disposable, and that's how you know it's communist. By the way, where this movement happens, drop them off. Movement happens, instead of killing them, instead of like having them face the wall, they just ignore them.
It's also very Hegelian in that what did Hegel say? Like basically like history. I can't remember the exact quote. It's about history using people and then just discarding them. So as soon as it's no longer politically viable, it's like, all right, on to the next person.
Well, it's the idea over the people.
Yeah.
Until the status quo. And so this is why people, when it's Black Friday and they want to call out some aspect of capitalism, or when the Black Lives Matter movement has stormed stores during Black Friday sales, that's a disruption of the status quo. It involves civil disobedience or civil initiative. Civil disobedience, in my mind, as Dr. King kind of states it, a nonviolent resistance to laws or policies seen to be unjust. And so this is why in Letter from Birmingham Jail, Dr. King...
It's important to note that when they say nonviolent, that only means not being violent toward people. They're not liberal. So burning down a building with no one inside of it is still non-violent. Destroying property is still non-violent. That's what they mean by non-violent.
Yeah, it just destroys their entire livelihood. That's all.
Right.
King really expertly talks about the difference between just and unjust laws. A government building that's banning trans people from being able to use the bathrooms, maybe you do a sit-in to highlight this issue and people get arrested, and that applies pressure to the decision makers of that policy.
I'm pretty sure that if people have a premeditated open plan to get arrested, there's something we can do about that, right? If they're talking about openly, I'm going there to get arrested. It's like, okay, well, you said you were going there to get arrested. Like, couldn't we, like, I don't know, impose a harsher crime on some of this if they're admitting that they're going there to get arrested, which means that they are committing a small crime.
Yeah, it's premeditation.
They're admitting it.
Yeah.
Which actually recently happened. There were people that went to the White House and protested that and got media attention around that.
The group learns how to stage acts of nonviolent resistance, which are often illegal, intended for political protest.
Ah, cute. So they're getting ready to be arrested. They are training people how to resist the police, and they're filming it. I mean, I don't feel like we had any of this with the J6 protesters, do you? The insurrectionists?
No. Not so much. I would assume that there is like some coordination between like select individuals, but it's presented as if like, Mima who went into the building is like that. Like they could have literally just been like, all right, we're going to prosecute the most violent offenders. And you look at MAGA, but the majority of them were like
98% would agree with that.
Yeah, they were literally like, because it's like they're like, well, we think they were there for a righteous cause, but they went overboard, and you
can't be violent. They're liberal at heart. That's not aggression. You can't do that.
Yeah, and it's funny because I disagree with like pardoning like even the more violent people, but it's kind of funny though because like it basically Trump was just like, oh, you're just gonna prosecute everyone. Well, fuck you. I'm just gonna let everybody go.
Oh, I understand it completely. Yeah, it's retaliatory. Good. Yes, retaliate.
Yeah, the left is literally. But that's the thing is that the left makes these incursions, and then when it's done back to them, they're like, "How dare you? This is a threat to our democracy." It's like you guys like. That's why
they're going to call Trump a Nazi no matter what. This is why I like Trump, is because he does not placate to them. I feel like after he like did a bump stock ban to try to placate to them, he regrets that, and he's like, no, I gave up too much with a bump stock ban.
In recent years, these acts of civil disobedience have become more widespread in France, particularly in the fight for climate justice, with movements like Extinction Rebellion and NGOs like Greenpeace.
Oh, NGOs.
Les participants, en règle générale, s'intéressent et se posent des questions autour.
I would love to put this in Photoshop and make it look like a white supremacist rally. They're fucking all white.
They're really are
all white.
As our friend Isaiah of Newfound fame looks about white is what he
looks about white.
That's what he always says.
Dude, if you're a black anti-communist and when he trashes, he doesn't trash white people. He trashes white leftists and he does it perfectly.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
Civil initiative is defined as building alternatives to meet the needs neglected by the state systems. Mutual aid, in essence, is a form of civil initiative.
The Syringe Access Program serves as a comprehensive harm reduction program. Its aim is to reduce the amount of disease passed through using dirty and used needles.
So every person that we serve or every person that's in treatment is on their own journey.
The Syringe Access at Safe Point is aimed to keep clients...
I love this. They're like
no.
people are gonna...
That is not what I want to hear.
It's like, you know what? Like, let's let them do drugs. Let's just try to give them less AIDS. This basically is what they're doing here.
Like, I understand that they are on their own journey, but they shouldn't be state funded on their own journey, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, fuck it. We're going to give them a bunch of needles and then whatever they decide to do. Dude, even in Boston, Mayor Michelle Wu, we have a place called Methadone Mile, okay? And it's in a pretty inconvenient part of Boston. And it's like a heroin get-together tent city because it's near the methadone clinic. And Michelle Wu put them into a fucking hotel for a few months, and they were allowed to fucking do drugs in that hotel. There was no monitoring at all whatsoever. When they do these needle exchange programs, they never... The public, liberals, general people in society would be way more okay with it if you talked about the parameters that were going to be enforced around it instead of it's their own journey, man. Like, you sound like you just got poked by a needle. Hey, man, sometimes you get poked. It's all up to you, man. Everyone's going on their own journey, man. I don't want you in charge of the fucking needles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alive and as healthy as possible until they want to go into treatment. Equitas Health believes getting people clean needles will get them access to addicts who they say may never have come to them before, but they just aren't giving out free syringes. This program gives addicts the potential help they need.
Thank you for watching this Direct Action 101 series. I just want to take a moment to let you know that this episode is brought to you by Means TV, leftist cooperative streaming service.
I'm going to have to go on this.
Dude, they just showed... I just noticed this. They just showed Second Thought. Do you know who Second Thought is?
Heard of it.
He was the one talking... So,
it's a person?
With the whole Hassan Piker, Ethan Klein fucking drama.
Yeah.
He was on the podcast. He is... hand in hand with Hassan Piker in terms of being complicit with intentionally trying to sound moderate to radicalize the younger population. He has like over 1 million subscribers, but he also like fucking takes rides in fucking $250,000 cars. He has there's a communist car show rich car show that he fucking has. But I just saw Second Thought there, and I perused through Means TV and trying to grab some content possibly, and it is dismal. It is dismal.
Is it like not even hilarious? Because sometimes watching them is hilarious.
It would take time to comb through it, and I found something that was free that was a fucking leftist prank show. And
oh my god,
I'll send it to you offline. It is well below your standard of being entertained. I'll put it to you that way. I don't know if we can use it, dude. It's really rough.
Well, they can't. They have no idea that they are so far removed from reality that they're never funny because they can't act. How can you accurately satire reality if you don't understand what reality even is? It's not possible. That's why they can't meme.
Right, and like none of them are being criticized on here. Like in the free marketplace of ideas, your shitty video is criticized. It looks really rough. What would be worth it though, is for some of the documentaries on there would probably have some really unique stuff.
Oh yeah.
sorts of amazing documentaries
Shut up.
painted, and
Still
the episode.
gay.
The act of organizing food banks, setting up safe spaces for vulnerable population, getting worker-owned cooperatives are all examples of civil initiatives that align with the principles of direct action. Under civil initiative, you're not necessarily going in to break laws, but you're doing the empathetic, humane, and moral thing.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Oh my god!
I'm sure.
What an emotional abuser in a relationship, dude.
It's just
holy
frustrates me.
shit! I just
like,
got violated from that.
Like they feel as if capitalism is a prison, so like they have to free us all from it. Like these guys remind me of like the white separatists. I'm like just buy some land, create your town, like exist there by yourself as free as you possibly
They have to
want
antagonize. They have to agitate. It's a part of the program.
It's just so frustrating, man. Like you can create your own little perfect world within this prison system that you believe reality and existence is. Like you could do it. You could just do it right now.
I know, but
Nothing's stopping you.
I just want you to appreciate how psychotic it is to say, I'm not saying break laws, I'm saying be empathetic.
Yeah.
That is just
Which is hilarious.
Programming.
Well, yeah, especially because I'm pretty sure this person is completely devoid of all empathy. So
And that can be a really powerful thing for people to see, and it can influence other people. And I do believe civil initiative can be antagonistic towards the state or an opposing force as long as it doesn't back down to repression. Take this with a grain of salt. I'm not telling you what to do. But typically, I think a lot of people consider direct action to be more the illegal side of things. I mean, if you're going to lock down on a building because of a campaign or a demand that you're making, that's not legal, but that's a form of direct action. If you're going to do a tree sit on public land that also happens to be owned by the government because they are allowing a corporation or a public institution to deforest, like the Stop Cop City movement, while also building simultaneously a...
I love that. They're being oppressed because their Stop Cop City movement got shut down.
I hear these assholes always, what is a cop city? What's a cop city?
It was something in Atlanta. They were training police in over a piece of land, I believe. They were training police because things are escalating in Atlanta. And so they call it cop. It's the Don't Say Gay bill. They call it Cop City. Oh my God, it's Cop City. And that makes the cops seem like they own the city. And so then they have to. Okay. Yeah, it was a large police training facilitation program, which is funny because during quarantine race war, it was like, no, we're not saying abolish the police. We're saying defund the police. On the streets, abolish the police. Yeah, and then they protect the people on the streets saying abolish the police, while they, as above, are saying, no, we're just saying defund the police and put it towards social services. And, if instead of Derek Chauvin kneeling on George Floyd's neck, we'd have a 105-pound, 5'1" white woman ask him how he's feeling.
Yeah, exoteric versus esoteric. That's why it's that. I understand it because it's like you never want to talk to these people like leftists because like it's like you understand like what they're telling you is not what they actually want to do. So you literally just can't even entertain them. You can't. You just be like, nope, get out, get the fuck out.
I know, but it's so annoying because what they do is here's what it feels like. When you are aware of their tactics and you see them manifest in society for like years at a certain point, here's what it feels like. It feels like they go up to you in your ear and go, I'm gonna fucking kill you. And then you react and you fucking go, fuck you. And then they go, look, he's saying fuck you to me. He's being racist. That's what it feels like. That's how obvious it seems.
Yeah, they're cry bullies.
Yeah,
cry bullies.
exactly.
That's all they are.
Police training academy. You are going to have to do
police
some
training
shit that
academy.
the state does not consider legal. I mean, when Dr. King was leading the nonviolent protests in the sit-ins, that shit was illegal. During the U.S. student encampments, the campuses that were able to put up more of a fight really show people what the potential of radical blockades and occupations are. It was the people that tended to do more shit that was against the law or rules, held their ground longer, didn't fold to the state's demands or whims. And so I think direct action has a very clear attachment to not just doing things to be symbolic, but tangibly opposing the forces against us and not just having it be.
None of these people are investigated by the FBI at all whatsoever. They're just
I know.
openly allowed to talk about how they're going to break the laws. across the country, just a traveling circus across the country of breaking laws.
Well, that's the Democrats are Fabian socialists, right? So like they basically they send the message down to these idiots, and these idiots don't even realize that they're receiving the message. They think it's their own idea, and so they let them riot and loot and burn shit and slowly transform society. Meanwhile, like they know that if they wanted to, they could squash them at any moment. Like at any moment, they could squash these people. So it's like, I mean, it's in their best interest to like let this guy burn shit down. It just is.
Very intentional.
Yeah.
For performance or show. And then another qualifier of direct action that I have written down focuses on immediate outcomes. And I think I understand this quality, but I also think this quality is more in opposition to other more normative modes of direct action. People will enter organizations that...
Do you see all the cuts he had to do to his own fucking voice trying to describe this portion of a definition that is just going to change later on?
Yep.
He's cutting up his own voice so much. He rambled so much. This is the abridged version.
Yeah. Well, he loves hearing himself talk.
And he still had to cut it out. It was cutting a piece of his heart out that he had to cut his own voice out.
Yeah. When I speak, especially when I'm like in a video or doing this podcast, like I try to be as accurate as possible with as little words as possible to get my point across. I mean, he just goes on and on and on and on and on.
I know, but he had to edit himself, like with words at a time. Let me run it back. Look at these cuts. His face. There's the thumbnail. There it is.
That's an amazing thumbnail.
I understand this quality, but I also think this quality is more in opposition to other more normative modes of direct action. People will enter organizations that are a bit more mainstream or progressive, and you'll build out these campaigns that are centered around escalating tactics and making asks of institutions. And there is a very real idea about what a campaign timeline or escalation of tactics is. But to me,
there's a very real idea about the amount of time. What did he just say? I can't hear what he
direct
said.
Action comes at the point in a campaign or community initiative where we know that the decision makers don't care. We know that the people that have the power and the resources to change these conditions don't care.
We know that we don't have any good arguments, so we have to take the streets.
Yep.
We know we can't change their minds.
Yeah. Well, because it doesn't, their whole ideology is based around adopting a specific worldview. So, like, they just have to badger people into, not even into accepting the worldview, just being like, fine, do whatever you want, just leave us alone.
Care. We have done the petitioning, we've done the voting, we have done the more normative forms of making these demands, and direct action is when you use political force to make the decision makers uncomfortable, when you use political force or an activity to disrupt the status quo, or you do it to meet, as civil initiative would say, to meet the gaps of a system that is against all of us, or can more specifically target certain kinds of people more than me or you. And so focusing on immediate outcomes, I think, is turning away from the procrastination of more normative forms of political activity that demand that we put our time in, and it's going to take time, and we have to wait for them to come back to us and tell us what is right or the wrong thing, and then we decide what we need to do. Direct action and focusing on immediate out.
Is he talking about what he wants in the end at all whatsoever? It's just deconstructing. It's just destroying. Yep. What are his fucking prescriptions for society of what it should be replaced with? See, the communists tell you what it should be replaced with. He's not concerned with that at all whatsoever.
No, it's throw the Molotov cocktail and see where the fire spreads. That's basically what his approach is.
Outcomes is about understanding that systems and institutions that exploit people commit political violence, and in order to oppose those, to address those issues, we both have to understand what the structural wrong is, but we also have to understand what our immediate demand or outcome is. If you are doing a direct action to advocate for houseless people in your city, and you're passing out hand warmers, and you're setting up warming stations, and you're giving people blankets and tents and ways to stay warm, an immediate outcome for that form of direct action is that people survive the night. If you are going to city council and you do a sit-in and you refuse to leave until they change the city ordinances around how they treat homelessness, or how churches delegate their space for people without housing based on changing seasons, if you do not leave until your demand is met, you are doing a direct action that is demanding an immediate outcome and decision from those that are in power, so that the...
How fucking easy is it to remove them. How easy is it to remove them if they're... The whole thing with January 6th is that it was interrupting a proceeding, right? That's how they justified it being an insurrection, is that it was justifying the peaceful transfer of power. Okay, what about when they're trying to discuss something or make a law?
Well, I'll never get over that footage. Was it May of 2020 or 2021 where they were literally storming like the White House?
Bunker Boy, May 30th.
Yeah, May 30th. Trump had to be put in a bunker. I'll never get, like, nobody even knows that happened. It doesn't even exist.
Oh my fucking God. And
they
made fun of
the
him.
Church. They fired, but the mainstream media made fun of him, and they firebombed the church.
I think I'm done with it, Patrick.
I'm so done with it.
Because like I could keep listening to this, but I actually can't. And then when you just brought up how like I'm listening to this dude talk about how he's going to do what they did on May 30th. I'm listening. You bringing up Trump having to run to a bunker because they were lighting a fucking what was it? Firebombing a church?
They firebombed a church. Yeah.
Right. And I'm listening to him talk about how they're going to be doing this over and over again, and then Trump had to be moved, and then mainstream media made fun of him. I am officially done with it for the night. It's too much. It's fucking too much.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna go decompress by watching WWE Monday Night Raw on Netflix.
There you go. You're totally not gay.
No, not gay at all. Not greasy men performing intricately choreographed dancing as there's like. Yeah, it's definitely not gay.
It's straight dancing. Bye.